Hold on for a second, because we're going to go down to Capitol Hill. Carl Cameron is live from the Russell Rotunda down there. Carl, did Congress get a rude awakening this morning? And if so, why?
Yes, and for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is the lousy weather we're having. But it was a particularly rude awakening insofar as last night they spent a lot of time talking about the president's agenda, and the president was talking about the ability to both spend money to invest and cut spending to reduce the deficit and the debt. And this morning, the Congressional Budget Office has come out with a report. It's its forecast, essentially, for the next couple of years, and it's not good. Doug Elmendorf, the head of the CBO, said the federal budget will show a deficit of close to $1.5 trillion next year. That is 9.8% of GDP. That is the $1.5 trillion is a new record annualized deficit. The consequences of it mean, in essence, that for every dollar spent by the U.S. government, 40% is going on interest on the debt. Very tough news, and it underscores the dilemma that Republicans and Democrats alike are trying to face in balancing the budget. Last night's speech was all about the president's agenda and what he wants Democrats and Republicans to do together. But back on the ground here this morning, it's very much turning out to be what the House Republican majority wants to do and how Democrats in Congress think that that needs to be stopped.
Carl, I have two more questions. One, continuing on with this topic, what's next for Republicans and Democrats on the Hill?
Well, today we're going to see Republicans here in the Senate introduce a balanced budget amendment. Orrin Hatch of Utah, Republican, and John Cornyn of Texas will author and have already written up legislation that would require all deficit spending and any tax increases first get an approval of 2/3 of the House and Senate. It essentially would prohibit deficit spending or tax increases without a supermajority of both chambers of the Congress. Later this afternoon, by contrast, we're going to start to see Democrats begin fighting back against these Republican proposals because they're concerned that it's going to cut too deeply into the budget bone. And we'll see Kent Conrad, the chairman of the Senate Budget Committee, and Chris Van Hollen, a Democratic leader and a member of the Budget Committee over there, getting together to join forces to trash the Republican spending cut proposals. The Republican response last night came from Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan has had a Republican budget proposal, a very, very comprehensive one, on the web and out in public for the better part of a year and a half. So when Democrats say that the Republicans don't have a plan, all they need to do is look up what Paul Ryan, who gave the Republican response last night, has been pushing for some time. The Democrats, however, say that that would be too drastic. Yesterday, the Republican House voted, the House voted with the Republican majority controlling, that they would cut next year's spending back to 2008 levels, as opposed to the president's plan, which is to freeze them at current levels. And so they're arguing over how responsible they should be in terms of spending discipline. And Republicans are in the firm belief that what the president proposed last night was inadequate, and Democrats are arguing what Republicans are proposing would be way too deep.
Continuing sort of on what happened last night with the State of the Union, Carl, there's probably nobody that I'd rather go to than you to find out sort of what the overall sense of the president's speech was in terms of its success. Obviously you want to be objective, but what is your feeling about this?
Sure. I mean, the objective answer is that Democrats, for the most part, liked it. Republicans, for the most part, didn't. That's not a new phenomenon for State of the Union speeches when the Democratic president is speaking versus a Republican, and then you get a flip side of the coin. What was different last night was there was definitely a friendlier attitude in the hall. The idea that they were sitting together did make a difference. The fact that they were all wearing white and black lapel ribbons to signify their respect and sort of commemorating the victims of the Tucson rampage also created a different sense of community. One of the things that the joint seating, the bipartisan seating did, was it absolutely muted, completely muted, cheering in the applause.
Yeah.
There was lots of hand clapping and lots of standing up and down, but you didn't hear the rah rah and hear and go boy, that kind of stuff that you'd heard in past ones when the State of the Union speeches got rowdy. So that was different too. I think Republicans, for the most part, think that what the president was proposing, spending discipline that includes spending and increased spending on infrastructure and education and what the administration refers to as investments in the future, is impossible facing the kind of debt that we now know and we have known for literally decades the country faces. Democrats, on the other hand, argue that you got to be able to chew gum and walk at the same time, and that while the country has to spend money, as the president said, you can't cut too many services when people are unemployed. So there's going to have to be some spending on those sorts of things while they're trying to tighten their belts. And it's not going to be easy. And one of the things the president did not do last night And this was recognized by both sides.
Right.
He did not talk a great deal about entitlements. He did not talk about strong reforms of Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. And anybody serious about cutting the debt and the deficit knows that if you're talking about education, if you're talking about the various different cabinet agencies, the Interior Department, Energy Department, et cetera, you're nibbling around the edges of the pie, and the real discussion has to be with Medicare and Social Security, and that was something that both sides agreed that the president did not focus on last night.
Carl Cameron, live from the Russell Rotunda. Thanks very much, Carl, for that report. We appreciate it.